The medical bay of Waste Station Kira 7 smelled like death. Not the sharp smell of blood or the bitter smell of medicine. It was something worse. It was the smell of giving up. The smell of bodies that had stopped fighting. Yuna sat in the corner of the quarantine chamber with her back against the cold metal wall. Her silver skin had lost its shine many days ago. The purple lights that normally glowed along her arms and face had faded to a dull gray. She looked like a dying star, slowly losing its fire dot in her forearms. She held her daughter Lyra. The child was only 3 cycles old. Her small body was hot with fever. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. Every few minutes, she would cry out in her sleep, and Yuna would hold her tighter and whisper soft words into her ear. The Velith were not a strong species. They were artists and singers and dreamers. They made beautiful things with their hands and created songs that could make other species weep with joy. But they had weak bodies. Their immune systems could not fight the diseases that other species survived easily. When the Fade Plague came to their colony ship, it spread like fire through dry grass. First the old ones got sick, then the adults. Then, worst of all, the children. The plague made their bioluminescent markings dim and fade. It made their bodies burn from the inside. And there was no cure that worked fast enough for the Velith. Yuna had watched her mother die 3 weeks ago. She had watched her sister die 2 weeks after that. Now she was watching her daughter slip away, and she knew that she would follow soon. Her own body was already weakening. She could feel the plague eating at her strength, making every breath harder than the last. Around her, the quarantine chamber was filled with other Velith. Some lay on thin mattresses on the floor. Others sat against the walls like Yuna, holding loved ones in their arms. A few had already died, their bodies covered with white sheets, until someone came to take them away. No one came very often. The Galactic Health Coalition had sent doctors at first. They had run tests and taken samples and talked in quiet voices. Then they had declared the Velith non-viable patients and sealed the quarantine zone. That was the polite way of saying that the Velith were not worth saving. The medicine was too expensive. The treatment would take too long. And the Velith had nothing to offer in return. In the galaxy, everything had a price. Lives were measured in credits and resources and future value. The Velith were a small species with no military power, no economic strength, and no political allies. They were, in the cold language of the coalition, a poor investment. So they were left to die. Yuna understood this. She did not like it, but she understood it. The galaxy was not kind. The galaxy was not fair. The galaxy simply was, and small species like the Velith had to accept their place in it. She looked down at Lyra's face. Even sick and fading, her daughter was beautiful. She had her father's eyes and her grandmother's smile. She had been learning to sing before the plague came. Her voice had been high and sweet, like bells ringing in the wind. Yuna would never hear that voice again. She began to hum softly. It was an old song, one that her own mother had sung to her when she was small. A song about returning to the cosmic stream, about joining the great river of light that flowed between the stars. It was a mourning song, a song of goodbye. Other Velith heard her and began to hum along. The sound filled the quarantine chamber, soft and sad and strangely beautiful. They were preparing themselves for death, the way their people had done for thousands of years. Then the airlock hissed. Yuna stopped humming. Every Velith in the chamber turned to look at the door. It was not time for the food delivery. It was not time for the body collection. No one should be coming through that door. The heavy metal seal released with a loud clunk. The door swung open slowly, and a figure stepped through. It was a human. Yuna had seen humans before, but only from a distance. They were a strange species, neither very strong, nor very smart, nor very long-lived. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no obvious reason for their success. And yet they had spread across the galaxy faster than any other species in recorded history. This human was male and young by their standards. He had dark hair that stuck up in messy directions and eyes that looked very tired. He wore a dirty environmental suit covered with patches and burn marks. He did not look like a doctor or a soldier or anyone important. He looked like a man who had been working too hard for too long with too little rest. The human stood in the doorway and looked around the quarantine chamber. His eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in the sick and the dying and the dead. His face changed as he looked. It went from confusion to shock to something else. Something that Yuna did not recognize at first because she had not seen it in so long. Anger. Double quotes. What the hell is going on here? The human asked. His voice was rough and loud in the quiet chamber. A small robot floated up beside him, beeping a warning. Sir, this area is under quarantine. You should not be here. Please return to the main station. The human ignored the robot. He took another step into the chamber. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. I asked a question. What is happening to these people? They are Velith refugees, the robot said. They have been infected with the Fade Plague. They have been classified as non-viable. Standard protocol requires isolation until natural termination. Natural termination. The human repeated the word slowly, like he was tasting something rotten. You mean until they die? Correct. The human stood very still. Yuna watched him from her corner, holding Lyra close. She did not understand why this stranger had come. She did not understand why he cared. Humans were known for many things in the galaxy, but caring about other species was not usually one of them. Then the human looked directly at her. Their eyes met across the chamber. He saw a dying mother holding a dying child. He saw a silver skin that had lost its light. He saw 4 arms wrapped tight around a small body that was slowly going cold. And something in his face changed again. Yuna had seen many emotions in her life. She had seen joy and sadness and fear and love. But she had never seen what she saw on this human's face. It was like watching a fire start in a dark room. It was like watching a decision being made, not with the head, but with the heart. The human walked toward her. He moved past the other Velith, stepping carefully around the bodies on the floor. When he reached Yuna, he knelt down so that his face was level with hers. My name is Do-Yun, he said. His voice was softer now, but there was still anger underneath it. What's your name? Yuna did not answer at first. She did not know what to say. No one had asked her name in weeks. No one had looked at her like she was a person worth talking to. Yuna, she finally said. My name is Yuna, and this is my daughter, Lyra. Do-Hyun looked at Lyra. The child was unconscious now, her breathing shallow and weak. Her small hands were clenched into fists, like she was fighting something in her dreams. How long has she been sick? He asked. 12 days. And no one is helping? No medicine? No treatment? Yuna shook her head slowly. We are non-viable. The coalition decided. The treatment costs too much. We have nothing to pay with. Do-Hyun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was strange. It was calm and quiet, but underneath it, there was something hard. Something that sounded like a promise. That's about to change, he said. Do-Hyun stood up and walked back toward the airlock. His mind was racing with thoughts, but his feet moved with purpose. He had come to this station for fuel. He had come to rest for a few hours before his next cargo run. He had not come to find a room full of dying people that the galaxy had thrown away like garbage. But he had found them, and now he could not unfind them. The station administrator was waiting for him outside the quarantine zone. His name was Voss, and he was a Kreth. The Kreth were insect-like creatures with hard shells and clicking voices. They were known throughout the galaxy for their love of rules and regulations. Every problem had a procedure. Every question had a protocol. Voss stood with his forelegs planted firmly on the ground, and his upper arms crossed over his chest. His compound eyes watched Do-hyun with obvious disapproval. "A human," Voss said, his voice making sharp clicking sounds. "You should not have entered the quarantine zone. It is a violation of Section 47, Paragraph 12 of the Galactic Health Code. You will need to submit to decontamination procedures and fill out the appropriate forms." Do-hyun stopped walking. He turned to face the Kreth administrator. "I want to talk about those people in there." "There's nothing to talk about. The Velith have been classified as non-viable. Standard protocol is in effect. They will be kept comfortable until natural termination occurs. Their bodies will be disposed of according to regulations. Everything is being handled correctly." "Comfortable?" Do-hyun felt the anger rising in his chest again. "They're lying on the floor. Half of them are already dead. There are children in there." Voss made a sound like grinding stones. It took Do-hyun a moment to realize it was laughter. "Yes, it is unfortunate. The Velith are a fragile species. They were unlucky to contract the Fade Plague. But the mathematics are clear. Treating one Velith would cost the same resources as treating 12 Kreth or 8 humans or 20 Rillian. The Coalition must make difficult choices. Choices." Do-hyun's hands curled into fists at his sides. "You call letting children die a choice. I call it efficiency. I call it proper resource allocation. The galaxy is vast, human. There is much suffering. We cannot save everyone. We must save those who matter most." "And who decides who matters?" Voss tilted his head, confused by the question. "The Coalition decides, based on economic value, military alliance, political importance. The Velith have none of these things. They are artists and singers. They contribute nothing of practical value. Therefore, they have low priority." Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Yuna sitting in that corner with her dying daughter. He thought about the way she had looked at him, with eyes that had given up hope so long ago that they had forgotten what hope looked like. What would it take to save them? He asked. Voss made the grinding sound again. "You cannot be serious." "I'm completely serious. What would treatment require? What medicine? What equipment? Give me a list." The Kreth administrator stared at Do-hyun with his compound eyes. In his many years of station management, he had never met anyone like this human. Most species accepted the Coalition's decisions without question. They understood the way the galaxy worked. They did not challenge the mathematics. "Very well," Voss said finally. "I will tell you, though it changes nothing. The Fade Plague requires antiviral compounds to stop the infection. It requires cellular regeneration therapy to repair the damage. It requires constant monitoring and supportive care. The treatment takes weeks. The cost is enormous. How much? More than you have human. More than your ship is worth. More than you will earn in 10 years of cargo hauling. The Velith have no money and no allies. No one will pay for their treatment. No one will even consider it." Do-hyun nodded slowly. He looked back at the quarantine zone, at the heavy metal door that separated him from all those dying people. "My ship has a medical bay," he said. "It's small, but it works. That is irrelevant. You do not have the medicine or the expertise. I know a doctor. She works at Helix Station. She owes me a favor." Voss's clicking became faster, more agitated. "Helix Station is 6 days away. The sickest Velith will not survive that journey. And even if they did, no hospital will accept non-viable patients without Coalition authorization. You would be wasting your time and your fuel. Maybe." Do-hyun started walking toward the docking bay where his ship was waiting. "But I'm going to try anyway. This is madness." Voss followed him, his four legs clicking rapidly on the metal floor. You are a cargo hauler. You transport grain and machine parts. You are not a hero. You are not a savior. You will bankrupt yourself for strangers who cannot repay you. It makes no logical sense. Da-Hyun stopped at the entrance to the docking bay. He turned to look at the Kreth one more time. You know what doesn't make sense to me? He said, leaving people to die because some number on a spreadsheet says they're not worth saving. Telling a mother that her child isn't valuable enough to deserve medicine. That's what doesn't make sense. The galaxy operates on logic, human, on mathematics, on cold, clear calculation. Emotions have no place in these decisions. Then maybe the galaxy is wrong. Da-Hyun walked into the docking bay without looking back. His ship was an old freight hauler called the Stubborn Mule. It was not pretty. It was not fast. But it was his, and it had a medical bay that he had installed himself after a bad experience with space sickness 3 years ago. He climbed aboard and started preparing for departure. His fingers moved across the control panels, checking fuel levels and plotting courses. He pulled up his contact list and found the name he was looking for. Eunji. She was a doctor at Helix Station. They had met years ago when Do-Hyun had transported medical supplies to an outbreak zone. She was tough and smart, and she did not follow rules that she thought were stupid. He sent her a message. Coming your way. Bringing patients. It's bad. Need your help. The response came quickly. How bad? Fade plague. Multiple victims. Including children. There was a long pause. Then, coalition authorized? No. Another pause. Then, how many patients? Da-Hyun thought about the quarantine chamber. He thought about all those bodies on the floor. Some were too far gone to move. Some had already passed beyond help. But others still had a chance. Yuna and Lyra still had a chance. As many as I can fit on my ship, he replied. You're an idiot, Do-Hyun. I know. Will you help? The response took a full minute to arrive. Do-Hyun held his breath while he waited, watching the cursor blink on his screen. Bring them, Eunji finally wrote. I'll figure something out. Do-Hyun let out the breath he had been holding. He closed the message window and started toward the airlock. He had a lot of work to do and very little time to do it. The sickest Velith might not survive even one more day. He was going to save as many as he could. As he walked back toward the quarantine zone, he passed Voss again. The Kreth administrator watched him with something that might have been confusion or might have been fear. You are making a mistake, human, Voss said. Do-Hyun did not stop walking. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. The coalition will not approve of this. There will be consequences. Fines, penalties. They may take your ship. They may take your license. Then they can take them. I'll figure something out. Voss said nothing more. He simply stood and watched as the human walked away, heading back to that room full of dying strangers, ready to give up everything for people he had never met before today. The Kreth administrator had lived for many years and seen many strange things, but he had never seen anything quite like this. He wondered, not for the first time, what exactly was wrong with humans. The quarantine chamber door opened again, and Do-Hyun walked back in. This time, he was not confused or angry. This time, he moved with purpose. He carried blankets under one arm and a medical kit in his hand. Every Velith in the room watched him. They did not understand what was happening. No one came back to this place. Once you entered the quarantine zone, you only left in a body bag. Do-Hyun walked to the center of the room and looked around. His eyes moved from face to face, checking conditions, making decisions. He was not a doctor, but he had spent enough time in rough parts of the galaxy to know the difference between sick and dying. Listen to me, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My name is Do-Hyun. I'm a cargo hauler. I have a ship. It's not big, but it has a medical bay. I'm going to take as many of you as I can to Helix Station. There's a doctor there who can help." No one moved. No one spoke. They simply stared at him with their faded gray eyes. "I know you don't know me," Do-Yun continued. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm offering you a chance. It's not a guarantee. Some of you might not survive the journey, but it's better than staying here and waiting to die." An old Velith male pushed himself up from the floor. His name was Oren, and he had been a teacher before the plague came. His silver skin was almost white now, and his lights barely flickered. "Why?" Oren asked. His voice was weak but clear. "Why would you do this? We have nothing to give you. We cannot pay you. We cannot help you. We are strangers." Do-Hyun looked at the old man for a long moment. It was a fair question. The galaxy ran on exchanges. You give something, you get something. That was how things worked. That was how they had always worked. "Because it's the right thing to do," Do-Hyun said simply. "And because I can." Maybe that's not a good enough reason for most people, but it's good enough for me. Oren stared at him. Then, slowly, the old Velith smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "You are a strange creature, human," he said. "But I think perhaps the galaxy needs more strange creatures like you." Do-Hyun began moving through the room, checking each Velith one by one. Some were too weak to move. Their bodies had already begun to shut down. There was nothing he could do for them except make them comfortable. He gave them water and soft words and the knowledge that someone cared. Others were stronger. Sick, yes. Fading, yes. But still fighting. These were the ones he could save. He counted 13 Velith who might survive the journey. Yuna and Lyra were among them. The child was very sick, but she was also young and strong. If they could get her to Helix Station in time, she had a chance. Do-Hyun began carrying the survivors to his ship one by one. It was hard work. The Velith were not heavy, but there were many of them, and the walk from the quarantine zone to the docking bay was long. By the third trip, his arms were aching. By the fifth, his legs were shaking, but he did not stop. Yuna was one of the last to leave. She stood at the door of the quarantine chamber, looking back at those who could not come. Oren was among them. The old teacher had refused to take a place on the ship. "My time is done," Oren had said. "Give my place to someone younger, someone who still has songs to sing." Yuna knelt beside him and pressed her forehead to his. It was a Velith gesture of deep respect and love. "I will remember you," she whispered. "I will tell Lyra about you. She will know your name." Oren smiled his tired smile. "That is enough. That is more than enough." Do-Hyun waited by the door. He did not rush Yuna. He understood what she was doing. She was saying goodbye to her people, to her world, to everything she had known. When she finally stood and walked toward him, her eyes were wet with tears. But her back was straight, and her arms held Lyra tight. "I am ready," she said. They loaded onto the stubborn mule, and Do-Hyun sealed the airlock. The ship was crowded now. 13 sick Velith filled every available space. They lay on bunks and floors and anywhere else that was soft enough to rest. Do-Hyun moved to the cockpit and began the launch sequence. His fingers danced across the controls, pushing the old ship to its limits. The engines roared to life, and the stubborn mule lifted off from Way Station. Kira-7. The journey to Helix Station should have taken 6 days at normal speed. Do-Hyun did not have 6 days. Some of his passengers would not survive that long. He pushed the engines harder. The ship shook and groaned. Warning lights flickered on the control panel. He ignored them. He dumped half his cargo into space to reduce weight and save fuel. He rerouted power from non-essential systems to the engines. The stubborn, Mule flew faster than it had ever flown before. Yuna came to the cockpit on the second day. She stood in the doorway, watching Do-yoon work. He had not slept since they left the station. His eyes were red and his hands were shaking, but he refused to leave the controls. "You should rest," she said. "Can't. Need to keep adjusting the course. Every minute counts. You will kill yourself." Do-yoon laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Maybe, but I'm not going to let your daughter die because I wanted a nap." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she moved forward and sat in the co-pilot chair. "Teach me," she said. "Show me what to do. I will watch the controls while you sleep." Do-yoon looked at her. Her silver skin was still gray with sickness, and her lights were still dim. But her eyes were clear and determined. "You're sick too," he said. "You should be resting. My daughter is dying. I cannot rest. I cannot sleep. But I can help. Please, let me help." Do-yoon nodded slowly. He spent the next hour teaching Yuna the basics of the control panel. She learned quickly. Her 4 hands moved across the switches and buttons with surprising grace. When she felt confident enough, Do-yoon finally allowed himself to close his eyes. He slept in the co-pilot's chair, his body finally giving in to exhaustion. Yuna watched over him as he slept. She watched over the controls. She watched over her daughter, who lay on a makeshift bed in the corner of the cockpit, her small body fighting its quiet battle. On the 4th day, the stubborn mule arrived at Helix Station. Do-yoon sent a message ahead. "We're here. Coming in hot. Have medical teams ready." Yoonji's reply was immediate. "Teams are waiting. You owe me a drink after this, you idiot." The ship landed hard on the station's docking platform. The doors opened, and medical teams rushed in. They moved with speed and purpose, loading the Velith onto stretchers and rushing them toward the hospital. Eunji met Do-yoon at the bottom of the ramp. She was a short woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She looked at him, at the exhaustion on his face and the shaking in his hands, and she shook her head. "You look terrible," she said. "Thanks. How bad is it?" "Bad. Some of them might not make it through the night, but some of them might." She looked at the Velith being carried past them. "You did good, Do-yoon. You gave them a chance. That's more than anyone else was willing to do." Do-yoon watched as Yuna was helped down the ramp, Lyra still clutched in her arms. The child was unconscious, her breathing so shallow it was almost invisible. "Save her," he said. "Please, save that little girl." Yoonji followed his gaze. She saw the mother and daughter, saw the desperation and love and fear all mixed together. "I'll do everything I can," she said. And then she was gone, running after the medical teams, shouting orders and demanding equipment. Do-yoon stood alone at the bottom of the ramp. His ship was empty. His cargo was gone. His fuel was almost depleted. He had broken a dozen laws and probably ended his career. But maybe, just maybe, he had saved some lives. And right now, that was all that mattered. The waiting room of Helix Station Hospital became Do-yoon's home for the next 3 days. He sat in the same plastic chair, staring at the same white walls, drinking the same terrible coffee from the same broken machine. He did not leave. He could not leave. Every time a doctor walked past, he stood up and asked for news. Every time the doors opened, he looked for a familiar face. Most of the time, there was nothing to report. The Velith were fighting for their lives, and all anyone could do was wait. Yuna sat beside him. She had refused treatment for herself until she knew Lyra was stable. The doctors had argued with her. Do-yoon had argued with her. But Velith mothers were stubborn creatures, and she would not be moved. So they waited together, the human and the alien. 2 strangers thrown together by chance and held together by hope. On the second night, Yuna finally spoke. "I do not understand you," she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Dawson looked at her. What do you mean? You risked everything for us. Your ship, your work, your future. You did not know us. You had no reason to care. In the galaxy, this is not how things work. People help those who can help them back. You help those who have nothing to give. Dahan was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the question. It was the same question Oren had asked. The same question Voss had asked. The same question he had been asking himself since he first walked into that quarantine chamber. My mother was a kind woman, he finally said. She raised me alone after my father died. We did not have much money. We did not have much of anything, really. But she always helped people when she could. Neighbors, strangers, anyone who needed it. He paused, remembering. His mother's face was growing blurry in his memory now. It had been so many years since she passed. I asked her once why she did it. Why she helped people who could not help us back. She said that the measure of a person is not how they treat people who matter. It is how they treat people who do not matter to anyone else. Yuna was silent, listening. Those words stayed with me, Do-hyun continued. When I walked into that room and saw all of you, I thought about what she would have done. And I knew she would have helped. She would not have thought about the cost or the risk or the logic. She would have just helped. He looked at Yuna directly. His tired eyes met her gray ones. So that is why, he said. Because my mother taught me that kindness is not a transaction. It is just something you do because you can. Yuna did not respond with words. Instead, she reached out with one of her 4 hands and placed it gently on top of his. It was a simple gesture, but it said everything that needed to be said. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands in silence, waiting for news that might never come. On the 3rd day, Yoonji walked through the doors. Her face was tired but calm. Do-hyun and Yuna both stood up immediately, their hearts pounding. Lyra's going to make it, Yoonji said. Yuna made a sound that was somewhere between a cry and a laugh. Her legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed to her knees on the hospital floor. Her bioluminescent markings, which had been gray for so long, suddenly flickered. Then they began to glow. Soft at first, then brighter. Purple light spread across her silver skin like sunrise after a long night. She wept. Great, shuddering sobs shook her entire body. All the fear and grief and desperation she had been holding inside came pouring out at once. Do-hyun knelt beside her. He did not know the proper Velith customs. He did not know what to say or do. So he simply placed his hand on her shoulder and stayed with her while she cried. Thank you. Yuna gasped between sobs. Thank you. Thank you. Eunji watched them with soft eyes. Then she looked at Do-hyun and nodded once, a gesture of respect from one tired person to another. She is not completely healed, Eunji said. She will need weeks of treatment. But the worst is over. She's going to live. And the others? Do-hyun asked. 3 did not survive the first night. 2 more are still critical. But the rest are responding to treatment. 7 Velith, including Yuna and Lyra, are going to make full recoveries. 7 lives. It did not sound like many, but it was 7 more than anyone else had been willing to fight for. Word of what Do-hyun had done began to spread. At first, it was just gossip on the station. A human cargo hauler who had broken quarantine to save a dying species. An illegal rescue mission that had actually worked. Then the story reached the news networks. Within a week, Do-hyun's face was being broadcast across half the galaxy. Some stations called him a hero. Others called him a criminal. The Galactic Health Coalition opened an official inquiry into his actions. The Kreth administrator Voss filed a formal complaint demanding severe punishment. There were hearings and investigations and endless questions. Do-hyun sat through all of them, answering honestly, accepting responsibility for what he had done. Yes, I broke the quarantine rules. Yes, I transported non-authorized patients. Yes, I would do it again. The coalition officials did not know what to do with him. His actions had violated dozens of regulations. By the law, he should lose his ship and his license. He should face fines and possibly imprisonment, but the public reaction was unexpected. Other humans heard the story and responded in ways no one had predicted. A medical frigate from Earth's outer colonies changed course and donated supplies to Helix Station. A pharmaceutical company sent a year's worth of Fade Plague medicine for free. A retired general contacted Douyin directly and offered to pay all his legal fees. Messages poured in from across human space. Ordinary people who had heard the story and been moved by it. Teachers and farmers. And shop owners who sent small donations in kind. Words. You made us proud to be human, one message said. Thank you for reminding us who we can be, said another. Other species of the galaxy watched all of this with confusion and wonder. Humans were not known for great acts of selflessness. They were known for their aggression, their ambition, their relentless expansion. This was something different. This was something no one had seen before. The Vela survivors gave testimony to the inquiry. They spoke of a man who had held the hands of the dying, who had sung to frightened children, even though he did not know the words, who had given everything for strangers who could offer nothing in return. They created a new word for humans, Sorakin. It meant those who stay. In their ancient language, it was a word reserved for the most sacred of bonds. The inquiry could not ignore the weight of public opinion. In the end, Douyin received only a small fine and a formal warning. His license was not revoked. His freedom was not taken when he walked out of the hearing room. Yuna was waiting for him. Lyra was in her arms, awake and smiling. The child's markings glowed bright purple, and her eyes sparkled with life. Uncle Douyin, Lyra called out, reaching toward him with small hands. Douyin laughed and took the child from Yuna's arms. He held her carefully, marveling at how light she was, how fragile, how alive. Hey there, little one, he said. How are you feeling? Better, Lyra said seriously. The nice doctor gave me medicine. It tasted bad, but now I feel good. That's great, kid. That's really great. Yuna watched them together, and she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Real hope for the future. What will you do now? She asked Douyin. He looked at her, still holding Lyra in his arms. He thought about his ship, his empty cargo hold, his uncertain future. I don't know, he admitted. Figure something out, I guess. Find some work. Keep flying. Yuna nodded. Then she stepped forward and pressed her forehead to his, a Velith gesture of deepest respect and gratitude. Whatever you do, she said, you will not do it alone. The Velith do not forget those who saved us. We do not abandon our Sorakin. Douyin felt something warm spread through his chest. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if things would get better or worse, but for the first time in a long time, he did not feel alone. 6 months passed like water flowing downhill. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always moving forward. Douyin stood in the docking bay of Helix Station, looking at a ship he did not recognize. It was beautiful. Sleek lines and polished metal. New engines that hummed with quiet power. A hull that had never seen battle or damage or the rough treatment of cargo work. It was not the stubborn mule. The old ship had finally given up after the desperate run from Waste Station Kira 7. Its engines had burned out completely. Its frame had cracked from the stress. The mechanics had shaken their heads and said there was nothing to be done. Do-hyun had said goodbye to his old friend quietly, alone in the docking bay at midnight. He had patted the damaged hull and thanked her for getting them here safely. Ships did not have souls, or so people said. But Do-hyun was not so sure. Now he stood before this new vessel, and he did not know what to say. "It is called the Stubborn Mule II," Yuna said. She stood beside him with Lyra holding her hand. Both of them were healthy now, their silver skin shining and their purple lights glowing bright. "I don't understand," Do-hyun said. "I didn't buy this. I can't afford this." "You did not buy it." "We did." "We?" Yuna smiled. It was a real smile, full of warmth and light. "The Velith. All of us. When word spread about what you did, our entire species responded. Every colony, every ship, every community. We collected funds. We wanted to give you something. Something that would last." Do-hyun felt his throat tighten. He looked at the ship, at its gleaming surface and powerful engines. Then he looked at Yuna, at the gratitude in her eyes. "This is too much," he said. "I just did what anyone should have done." "But no one else did," Yuna replied. "That is the point. The galaxy is full of people who say the right things and believe the right things. But when the moment comes, when it costs something, they turn away. You did not turn away. You stayed." She gestured toward the ship with one of her 4 arms. "This is not payment. We know you did not help us for reward. This is a gift. A gift from a grateful people to a man who reminded us that kindness still exists in the universe." Do-hyun walked slowly toward the ship. He ran his hand along the smooth metal of its hull. It felt cool under his fingers, alive with potential. "There is something else," Yuna said. She walked up the boarding ramp and pressed a button. A section of the ship's interior became visible through a transparent panel. It was a medical bay. But not like the tiny one on the old Stubborn Mule. This one was large and fully equipped. Beds and machines and storage for medicine. Everything a doctor would need to treat patients in the field. "We designed it ourselves," Yuna explained. "A mobile clinic. So that you can continue to help people. So that you can reach those who have been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy." Do-hyun stared at the medical bay. He did not trust himself to speak. The emotions inside him were too big for words. Lyra tugged on his hand. He looked down at the little girl who had been dying just 6 months ago. She was full of life now, bouncing on her feet, her eyes bright with excitement. "Uncle Do-hyun," she said seriously, "Mama says we are going to fly with you. Is that true? Are we going to see the stars together?" Do-hyun looked at Yuna. "What does she mean?" "I mean what I said before," Yuna replied. "The Velith do not abandon their Sora kin. You will not fly alone anymore. I will come with you. I will help run the medical bay. I have been training with the doctors here. I am not an expert yet, but I am learning. You don't have to do this. You have your own life, your own people. My people are everywhere now, scattered across many worlds. But my place is here. My place is with you. You gave us our lives back, Do-hyun. Let us give you something in return. Let us give you a family." The word hit Do-hyun like a wave. Family. He had not had a family since his mother died. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to belong somewhere. He knelt down so that his face was level with Lyra's. The little girl looked at him with her big, bright eyes. "You really want to fly with me?" he asked her. "It's not always fun. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes the food is terrible." Lyra nodded firmly. "I don't care. I want to help people like you help me. Mama says that's what Sora can do. They stay together and they help everyone they can." Do-hyun felt something break inside him. Not a bad break. A good one. Like a wall coming down. Like light coming through a window that had been closed for too long. He stood up and looked at Yuna. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it. Let's fly together." Yuna's smile grew even brighter. She pressed her forehead to his once more, sealing the bond between them. They boarded the stubborn mule the second together. Yuna settled into the co-pilot's chair like she had been born there. Lyra ran around the cabin, exploring every corner, chattering about all the things she saw. Dayun sat in the pilot's seat and powered up the engines. The ship responded smoothly, humming with energy and readiness. He had already received messages from all across the galaxy. Requests for help from forgotten colonies and abandoned stations and neglected species. The story of what he had done had spread far and wide. People knew that there was a human out there who would come when no one else would. They called him the Sorokin, the one who stayed. Where to first? Yuna asked. Donghyun looked at the star map on his console. So many lights. So many worlds. So much suffering that he could never hope to fix all of it. But he could fix some of it. One person at a time. One life at a time. There's a mining colony on the edge of the outer rim, he said. They sent a message last week. Some kind of respiratory illness spreading through the workers. The mining company says it's not profitable to send medical teams. Yuna's expression hardened. Then we will go. Do-hyun nodded. He entered the coordinates and activated the jump drive. The stubborn Mule II lifted off from Helix Station and rose into the darkness of space. The stars stretched out before them, endless and cold and full of people who needed help. Behind them, the galaxy watched. The news networks talked about the human cargo hauler who had become something more. They debated what it meant. Was he an exception? A mistake? Or a sign of something larger? The other species wondered too. They looked at humanity with new eyes. This strange, short-lived species that seemed to operate on emotions rather than logic. That helped strangers for no reason. That refused to accept the cold mathematics of the galaxy. Perhaps, they thought, there was something to learn here. Perhaps kindness was not weakness after all. Perhaps the willingness to help those who could not help. Yubak was not foolishness but strength. On the bridge of the stubborn Mule II, Lyra pressed her small face against the window and watched the stars streak past. Uncle Do-hyun, she said, are we going to save everyone? Do-hyun looked at the little girl he had saved, at the life he had fought for, at the future that had seemed impossible just 6 months ago. No, he said honestly. We can't save everyone. No one can. But we can save some. And that's enough. That's always enough. Lyra nodded, accepting this wisdom with the simple grace of childhood. Yuna reached over and took Dayun's hand. He looked at her, at the light in her eyes, at the hope on her face. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For showing me that the universe does not have to be cold. That even in the darkness, there are people who carry fire. Do-hyun squeezed her hand gently. He did not have words for what he felt, but he did not need them. Some things did not need to be said. The ship flew on through the endless night, carrying its small crew toward those who needed them. A human, a Veloth mother, and a child who had been given a second chance at life. Behind them, the galaxy watched and wondered. And for the first time in a very long time, it began to hope.